A prophet, a great prophet, was asked by the strong oppressor who was ruling the land that he was in, said, well, if you leave from me, or if I banish you from the land, what would you have? How would you survive? And the prophet answered him. The prophet said, the one who created me will guide me. The one who created me will guide me. The great thinkers, they studied human creation, and they got great guidance, insight into human creation, and they got great guidance from how human beings are constituted. And they use that God guidance, they use that knowledge to improve upon the life and advance the life, progress the life, according to the will of God.
One of the major problems in the crisis of knowledge is that knowledge has been defined by a materialistic, hegemonic civilization that does not acknowledge other forms of knowledge. So, for instance, in our tradition, as well as the tradition that Dr. Delp was trained in, which is the Catholic tradition, in our tradition, our epistemology is very different from the epistemological assumptions of the current dominant model around the globe. But if we don't understand the epistemological assumptions, if we simply go to these universities and we imbibe what's being taught without having the critical skills to understand and analyze these things, then we become victims of worldviews that were engendered by others that do not share the same first principles that we share. If we don't know our first principles, if we don't know what our methodologies are, if we don't know what the epistemology of Islam is, if we don't know how we view truth and what is truth, if we don't know these things, then that ignorance is easily replaced by another type of ignorance, which is a compounded ignorance. It's learning things that are simply wrong. Our scholars differentiated between simple ignorance and between compounded ignorance. Al-Jahl al-Murakkab wal-Jahl al-Basit. Jahl al-Basit is the ignorance that somebody who knows they're ignorant has. And this, Dr. Naqib al-Attas calls it innocent ignorance. It's something that can be remedied. But compounded ignorance is an ignorance where somebody is ignorant and they're also ignorant of their ignorance.
In the Islamic theory of knowledge, the term used for knowledge in Arabic is ilm, which, as Rosenthal has justifiably pointed out, has a much wider connotation than its synonyms in English and other European languages. Knowledge falls short of expressing all the aspects of ilm, knowledge, in the Western European world means information about something divine or corporeal, while ilm is an all-embracing term covering theory, action, and education. Rosenthal, highlighting the importance of this term in Muslim civilization and Islam, says that it gives them a distinct characteristic. Ilm is an all-embracing term. In fact, there is no concept that has been operative as a determinant of the Muslim civilization in all its aspects to the same extent as ilm. This holds good even for the most powerful among the terms of Muslim religious life, such as, for instance, al-Tawheed, the recognition of the oneness of God, ad-Din, the true religion, and many others that are used constantly and emphatically. None of them equals ilm in depths of meaning and usage. There is no branch of Muslim intellectual life, of Muslim religious and political life, and of the daily life of the average Muslim that remain untouched by the all-pervasive attitude towards knowledge as something of supreme value. It may be said that Islam is the path of knowledge. No other religion or philosophy has more emphasized the importance of ilm. The frequency of the word ilm is undeniable. In the Holy Quran, the word alim has occurred in 140 places, while el-ilm in 27. In all, the total number of verses which ilm and its derivation and associated words are used is 704. The aids of knowledge, such as book, pen, ink, amount to almost the same number. Kalam, the Arabic word for pen, occurs in 2 places. El-Kitab, the word book, in 230 verses, among which El-Kitab for Al-Quran occurs in 81 verses. Associated with writing occur in 319 verses. It is important to note, pen and book are essential to acquisition of knowledge. The Islamic revelation starts with the word ikra, read or recite. According to the Quran, the first teaching class for Adam started soon after his creation, and Adam was taught the names of all things. Allah is the first teacher and the absolute guide of humanity. This knowledge was not imparted to even the angels. So our next question of concern is, what is epistemology?
I tend to rely on the ancient and the medieval understanding of these things, but these are all the terms that are related in contemporary thought. Epistemology endeavors to account for what knowledge is by distinguishing belief, understood more or less as cognition, from knowing in the strict sense, and it does so by claiming that a proposition to be known has to be true. The person who holds that proposition or entertains that proposition has to believe it. And then in addition to those 2 factors, there has to be justification. So that is some kind of account of why that belief is true or should be thought to be true.
Next question you come to is the epistemological question. Well, how do you know whether a given fact is true or false? The answer that I adhere to is the one that was first articulated clearly by al-Ghazali, which is that you need to use 3 different methods of ascertaining knowledge, and that these 3 methods have to confirm one another. Those 3 methods are reason, experience, and transmission from reliable sources, which was mentioned before by George. Some things I may know by one or the other only.
Yes.
For example, I know the existence of Thule, Greenland, because I've seen it on a map. I've met people who've been to Thule. It's not a fact I can reason out from first principles, and I certainly have not experienced it myself. But that fact is, as reported to me by reliable sources, is consistent with everything else that I know by reason and by experience. And then similarly with the others. Now, historically, there have been other theories of epistemology. The ancient Greeks believed that you could reason from first principles to get certain knowledge. The important thing that I want to highlight here, touching on the previous discussion, is that in no case for human beings is absolute knowledge possible. The knowledge that we're talking about that comes from these 3 sources is knowledge as certain as human beings are capable of getting. But for us to say, for me to say, even as a physical scientist, that, I've done these experiments, I've done these theoretical models, I've talked to other great scientists, and we all agree that X. We're unanimous. Now, when you come back and say, so are you saying that X is true? And for that, I'd have to say, as the ancient Muslim scholars say, Allahu A'lam, God knows best. As near as we, as human beings, are able to determine, X is true.
To add to what's been very well said here, is to take it more from a metaphysical point of view. They say that there are characteristics of being. Unity, it has its identity, it's not something else, it's itself. It's open to intellect, and that's truth of being, and that it's good, it's attractive to the will. I would take that consideration of truth not perhaps so much from the point of view of knowledge, but the fact that reality, that being is open to the mind and open to then being known, always challenging it, never able to say this is the end and we've got this definitively and it will never be seen better or from a different angle or more deeply or more richly. But the truth is there attracting us to plunge in, and that it will be exciting, and that therefore it will be blissful. That this is the reality, and then knowledge, of course, is the human act of awareness. But that being is not obscure, that it's not hiding, that it's not tricky, it's not deceptive, it's not destructive, but on the contrary,